A Gen X father may believe consistency proves love completely while his children continue waiting for feelings to be spoken aloud. He shows up early, repairs the broken shelf, remembers the appointment, pays the bill, and assumes these acts have already said everything. If you grew up with that kind of father, you may remember dependable hands more clearly than sentences about pride, fear, or affection. The silence can look emotionally empty from the outside, yet inside his own logic. Reliability may feel like the most serious language available. Many Gen X boys grew up watching adults measure care through work, responsibility, practical help, and being there when something went wrong. In that environment, saying less could coexist with loving deeply because usefulness offered a safe, respected way to make devotion visible. A father might check the tires before a long drive, leave cash on the counter, then never mention that he worried all night. Schoolyards, workplaces, family kitchens, and television often rewarded toughness, humor, competence, and self-control more openly than vulnerable emotional explanation. Being the person who could handle things became valuable, especially when asking for reassurance or naming uncertainty risked feeling awkward or exposed. For some men, the toolbox, the overtime shift, and the lift home became easier expressions of care than a direct emotional conversation. A child, however, may not automatically translate a fixed boiler or a reliable pickup into the words, "I love you and value you." That gap becomes sharper when younger family members have learned that healthy closeness also includes naming feelings, reassurance, and explicit verbal appreciation. Reliability can therefore become part of a father's identity. If he keeps his promises, he believes the relationship itself should feel secure. His nervousness about emotional language may not mean indifference. It can reflect years of practicing competence where feelings remained private and secondary. At the dinner table, he may solve a problem immediately because offering a plan feels more loving than simply sitting beside distress. When a child says, "I just needed you to listen," he can hear criticism of the very method he uses to care. That moment may feel confusing because the father sees proof everywhere: repaired cars, attended matches, paid bills, and countless inconvenient favors. Changing his style can therefore feel less like learning a phrase and more like questioning whether his lifelong way of loving ever counted. In adulthood, children may appreciate his dependability while still grieving conversations that never happened, especially during breakups, failures, illness, or major life changes. A daughter may know he would drive 3 hours at midnight, yet still wonder whether he is proud of the person she became. A son may copy the same pattern, offering practical rescue to friends and partners while struggling when someone asks what he actually feels. Partners can also misread the silence, seeing withdrawal where he experiences steadiness or demanding words when he believes his actions are already unmistakable. Meanwhile, the father may feel increasingly unrecognized because the family notices what he does not say more than everything he quietly maintains. The conflict is rarely about whether love exists. It is often about whether love arrives in a form the other person can recognize. Generational patterns matter here, but personality, family culture, class, region, and individual experience can shape fathers very differently within the same cohort. Some Gen X fathers are verbally affectionate, while some younger parents also rely heavily on practical care and avoid emotionally explicit conversations. The deeper tension appears when reliability becomes so complete a language that adding words feels unnecessary, unnatural, or even suspiciously performative. Seen in context, this father may have built love around evidence. He arrives, repairs, provides, remembers, drives, carries, and keeps his word, because those behaviors make care tangible. An era that often praised self-sufficiency and practical competence could teach a boy that dependable action earns trust, while emotional display remains optional. Years later, the same lesson can harden into identity. A good father is the one people can count on. The strength is real. Families need someone who turns up when the car fails, the roof leaks, or life becomes chaotic. Yet reliability can solve practical insecurity without answering every emotional question. A child may know beyond doubt that dad will come. What remains uncertain is whether he understands their fear, admires who they are, or can say what their presence means to him. Picture the familiar exchange. His child shares something painful. He offers a solution, and both leave the conversation feeling strangely unseen. He thinks he has moved toward the problem. The child feels he moved around the feeling. If you recognize this pattern, the difficulty is not simply stubbornness. Speaking more openly can threaten an old internal bargain in which love was proven by usefulness, restraint, and endurance. Words may feel cheap beside decades of action, especially if nobody in his own family said them easily. The child, however, is not necessarily rejecting those actions. They may be asking for one more form of evidence, a sentence that names pride, worry, tenderness, regret, or affection. Without that translation, both sides can keep giving love while privately wondering why it is not landing. Return to the father who checks the tires, fixes the shelf, and arrives before anyone has to ask. None of those gestures become less meaningful when he adds words. Their meaning can become easier to receive. The shift is not from action to emotion as though one were superior. It is from a single language of care to a wider vocabulary. A child can learn to notice the devotion hidden inside consistency, and a father can learn that saying, "I am proud of you," does not erase everything he has already done. It makes the invisible part visible. For some families, that small addition changes the entire emotional atmosphere because reliability no longer has to carry every message alone. He can still be the man who shows up. He can also let the people he loves hear why he came.